Talk Zone presents the Geek Speak Radio Show with your hosts, Henry and Romo. Your top spot for everything entertainment and pop culture, including TV, movies, comics, casting news, and more. Now, here are your hosts, Henry and Romo.
First one is on the phone with us. The first one is actually a pretty cool little thing. You and I watched it last night. I watched it over the weekend, too. Yeah. It's a documentary that's been out. If you guys have seen it at the comic book conventions, you know what I'm talking about. The comic book literacy documentary.
Yeah.
Well,
it was good.
Why should I explain it? Let's have the director himself explain it. On the phone with us is Todd Kent. Todd, you there?
Hello.
Hey, Todd, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. So tell everybody what is the comic book literacy documentary you have?
Sure. It shows the usage of comic books to promote literacy and for various educational purposes.
And when did you come up with the idea?
I've been working on it off and on for several years. So I guess I came up with the idea a few years ago. I read comic books. I had been for several years and been making documentaries for several years. And, I just wanted to combine the two interests. And I knew that if I did that, I would want to do something positive about the medium. So kind of looked around, heard some stories about people learning to read from comics, did some research. One thing led to another, and that's kind of the genesis of the project.
It's a pretty good idea, actually, because there's some stories in the documentary itself. Like I said, I got to see it, and thanks for that, Todd. It's pretty good. We both of us here like it. Here, my co-host, Romo, and myself, we really like it.
Thank you.
But some of the stories in there, I like one especially. I forget exactly who it was, but he had a friend who came from somewhere in Asia, I think, and using comic books, reading the comic books, that, like you said, that translated into him reading Charles Dickens and all the classics. So
right.
Reading comic books definitely does help kids as well as adults learn to read.
Sure, yeah, the visuals help. It gets people started, especially if it's a foreign language type situation. There's several examples of that. They could follow the story without knowing exactly what every word is, and the more they get into it, the more they're introduced through the visuals to the words. So little by little, that helps them out.
So again, we're talking to Todd Kent. He's the director of the comic book literacy documentary. Take a look at the trailer. Like I said, the movie's not out yet. Todd is trying to get distribution for it, but going to take a break right now.
Geek Speak Radio Show will be right back. And now, more of the Geek Speak Radio Show on TalkZone.com. Here's Henry and Romo.
Welcome back to the Geek Speak Radio Show. We're talking to Todd Kent, director of the comic book literacy documentary film. Again, it's not out yet, but we do have the trailer linked up on GeekSpeakRadioShow.com. So tell everybody, I've seen it, like I said, but Todd, tell everybody, who do we interview? Who did you interview in the documentary?
Well, I was very fortunate to get several comic book writers and artists in the film. For example, I got Art Spiegelman. He's the guy who won the Pulitzer Prize for doing Mouse. If you haven't read that, please go check it out. I also got Paul Dini in there. Everybody probably knows Joe Quesada, Scott McCloud, Terry Moore, Strangers of Paradise, Echo, Tim Salacrop, Gail Simone, James O'Barr, the guy who created The Crow. Like I said, very fortunate to have some of these great creators. Some of them my personal favorites.
Where can it be seen? Because, like I said, it's not out yet. But where can it be seen? Just the comic book conventions, or where can it be seen?
Sure, yeah. We've got screening information on our website. It's comicbookliteracy.com. The next screening is going to be November 6th, I think, at the Vegas Valley Comic Book Festival, and that is in Las Vegas. As we add additional screenings, we'll post that to our website, our blog, our Facebook, all that great stuff. We screened earlier in the year at San Diego Comic-Con. We were at C2E2, various other festivals, literary events, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. What can comic book fans who are hearing this for the first time, what can they do to support the film and its message?
Well, if you'd like to see it in your area, you can always contact, you have a local comic book convention or a local group or organization that you think would be a good venue. Let them know, let me know. My contact information is on the website. Now, if you want to support the ideas in the film, I recommend taking your comics that you don't want and just giving them out to people, especially kids. Libraries, a lot of schools will take donations. They're always looking for this kind of thing. And I encourage, of course, age-appropriate material going to the kids, create the next generation of comic book readers, get them excited. And, libraries and schools will start incorporating them. And then, like I said, little by little, there'll be the idea of using them for education and for reading will start to become more mainstream. And, that's good for the industry. It's good for the medium. I think it's good for everybody.
As a matter of fact, in the documentary, you feature the Hero Foundry who does just that, right?
Yeah, and there are several organizations like that around the country. So, it never hurts to seek out a group like that. Or, you don't have to be a large group to donate your comics. One or two individuals can just, start something similar to that. Contact your local library. I guarantee you they are accepting donations.
Yeah, we're talking to Todd Kent, who's the director of the Comic Book Literacy Documentary, a documentary about literacy and using comic books to not just for kids but for adults to promote literacy education nowadays, especially when you run into the comic books are a dying medium. So why do you want to use them as an educational tool? How do you respond to people who have that idea?
Well, there's certainly some validity to saying that the medium is dying, or at the very least that it's not thriving the way that it has been and that it should be. I don't know that the success of best-selling titles is terribly relative to how important they are to helping to learn how to read. I do get a lot of people just saying there's not a lot of merit or value in the medium. So that typically comes from people who are just ignorant of the medium. They don't have a lot of exposure to it. They hear comic book and they think Batman, they think Adam West, they think, Pal, Biff, Boom.
Yeah.
So I try to get the word out about how there are just a lot of different types of comics. It's not just superheroes. It's capable of anything that any other medium can be. It's like thinking of television as only game shows or only comedies, whereas there's 1,000 different types of television shows on television. The same rule applies to comics. A lot of different kinds, appeal to a lot of different people. Some are better than others, obviously, but the more people get educated on what the medium is about and what it's capable of, then the more acceptance I find that it gets.
Yeah, I agree with you. The way I see it, especially when I was watching your documentary, I never really thought of it this way until I was watching it, like I said, is I see comic books as kind of like flashcards because, you have the pictures and you can see the words and you can tell what the character is doing, whether it's Spider-Man swinging through the city or Superman flying, what it is. So yeah, it kind of doesn't have validity that statement that it's a dying medium. It may be. I mean, it's going digital and everything, but it's still the same idea. It's still pictures with words. So doesn't really. I don't believe in people who say that.
Right, yeah, and it's very unique in that sense. People make the mistake of comparing it to prose a lot, saying, it takes a long time to read a novel. It's a few minutes to read a comic, therefore novels must be more valid, if you will. But it's a mistake of comparing apples and oranges, two different things. One of the points that I think is made very well in the film, made by Art Spiegelman, and I think Scott McCloud, too, to a certain extent, is that comics are kind of a model of how we take in information just in our everyday lives. We see things visually. We don't read our lives. We see it and we interact with it, and we go through a flow from one to the other, and that's comics are kind of a model of that. So it helps introduce those type of concepts of visual literacy to people that are trying to learn to read, and it helps to educate or get people more prepared for taking in visual information. And what Art Spiegelman says is that these days, more than ever, everything comes at us visually. Just walking down the street, there's billboards, there's signs, there's colors, there's moving pictures, there's everything. And, we're not prepared to understand what all that means. And the people that are making this imagery, these advertisements, or anything, they're taking the time to figure out how people take in information and how they can manipulate that to get their message across. When you read a comic, you're taking the information in visually. So it's a good model, it's a good kind of training wheels to get yourself prepared to help to decode all this visual information that you're going to get in everyday modern life.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, Todd, it's Romo. I love the film. I noticed that you sent some comics over to the U.S. soldiers overseas. Tell me more about that.
Sure. There's a great group called Heroes for Heroes, and I think if you're looking them up, it's one word. It's Heroes, the number 4, Heroes. And what they do is they send a lot of care packages to soldiers overseas. They started off, I think, with comic books because it's such a great portable medium. You could send a box of DVDs over there to them, but if they're in the desert and they can't they can't plug in their DVD player. They can't do, it's not convenient for them. They can carry a comic book around with them, sit down and read and get a little piece of that American culture, a little taste of home. And I think we go into this a little bit in the film, a history between the military and the comic book medium. I think the Red Cross during World War II would send over in their packages, it would include some comics for the troops. And there were a lot of young kids during that time. They would go right out of school, or they would quit school to join up, and that was a little bit of home, and it was reading material, so it helped keep them literate, and so that's going on today as well.
Something else you feature in the documentary is something that it's all around us, but you never really think about it because for people like you and everybody here on the show and everybody listening, reading comic books is like second nature to us. But you mentioned it a second ago in the last answer that you gave me. Everything around us has visual instructions now. It's not, insert slot A into tab B. It's not that anymore. It's actually a picture of somebody putting the tab into it. So that actually comes from comic books. And going back to the military, they do have instructions on how to fix, for example, an Abrams tank, I think was the example used in the documentary, and other things on there. So yeah, there's proof right there that this is really a great idea.
Sure. The great example that everyone uses is Will Eisner when he was in the service. His work was used quite a bit for training, and he would do this in comic book format, and it was how to strip your rifle, how to repair the truck, how to do this and that in comic book format. They found it was one of the better ways to express this information, and you see it even now. You go to IKEA, you pull out your instruction book for yourself or whatever, and there's no words on it. It's a comic essentially.
Yeah,
it's
just pictures.
Tab A into slot B, and I think Scott McCloud mentions in the documentary the airplane instructions. If you go down, how to save yourself, how to tear out the seat and use it as a cushion, and that comes to you. The information comes to you in comic format.
Yeah, like I said, to you, myself, everybody listening to the show, to us it's like second nature because we're so used to reading comics, but you never really think about that, so it's pointed out in your documentary. And again, that documentary is called Comic Book Literacy. So Todd Kent, director, thanks a lot for coming on and talking to us about the comic book literacy. Wish you a lot of luck with it. Come on back whenever you want.
Great. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
No problem. So there you go. Comic book literacy.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good idea. You were
cause.
watching it. We were watching it last night.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. It promotes reading. What more do you want? That's great. It should be in every school system. People should be behind this. It's great.